Some of you submitted some very interesting and sometimes intrusive questions. In today's video, I decided to have a Q&A and get some input from some of my more wiser followers and social media subscribers on what I can address and answer for them on my channel. And I selected 3 of those for today. So let's go ahead and get started. So for some of you who are new here to the channel, warm greetings and welcome. My name is Khonsura, and on this channel I help clients achieve a baseline fitness, positive mindset, and the equanimity, calm that they seek, using ancestral wellness concepts, yoga flexibility techniques, and the martial arts, especially given the fact that many of us are so busy, it's hard to put into practice physical fitness training. Accordingly, on this channel, I try to teach simple ways of achieving that type of optimal health and wellness in the simplest, shortest amount of time possible. Okay, so here's the first question. You have a very unusual name. Where did you get it and what does it mean? My name, inspired by my studies of classical Africa, and after a trip that I made over to East Africa to see the monuments, architecture, and art over in Egypt, I decided that I would rename myself Khonsura to kind of represent myself as a teacher and an educator. It shelters the idea that the moon and sun illuminates the darkness. To me, ignorance is a form of darkness. So my idea was, as an educator, I tried to bring the light or to illuminate darkness created by ignorance and illusion. The name is meant to encapsulate the characteristics of a sage, a teacher, an educator, one who enlightens. Okay, question 2. How did you get started in the martial arts? First of all, my interest started when I was about 8 years old, when I used to watch a lot of Kung Fu and Bruce Lee films, and Bruce Lee had just died maybe 2 years before I started actually watching his films. But as I grew up, I stayed physically active, not necessarily in the martial arts, but I always had at the back of my mind that someday I will find a martial arts school and a teacher and take martial arts. In my undergraduate years, I did have that chance. They had some Taekwondo classes on campus that I took and participated in. Shortly after a semester, that ended, and eventually I graduated. And in between my undergraduate and my graduate schools, I was walking and I saw this sign for a martial arts school, and I decided to inquire inside. It was a very traditional setting. I had to have an interview with the sensei at the time. After the interview, he accepted me as a student, so I began my studies in martial arts from that point on. Shortly after that, I got into graduate school and began my graduate studies. So I continued to study the martial arts through my first master's degree program. But eventually, I left the city that I was in at the time. I went to another city to further my studies. And this program in particular was even more intense, so I put aside the formal training, but I continued to train physically and to keep up on the different forms. Eventually, I got around to finding a sensei of the same particular school, and I, again, went for an interview. He accepted me, and I was actually able to start at the rank that I left off at. So I continued my martial arts through graduate school, and then once I finished my graduate school in this city, I left to another city, and fortunately for me, there were no senseis that taught that particular style of martial arts. The closest one was a long distance away, and there was no way I could study consistently with someone that far away from where I was living at the time. So I was a little disappointed. Actually, I was very disappointed because I wanted to continue my studies. And one evening I was walking down the street with a friend, and again, by chance, I looked up and there was this Asian style structure kind of hidden I probably passed this building several times before I actually noticed it. But when I did notice it, my friend said you should check this school out and maybe you can continue your studies. I hesitated because I was not a fan of emptying my cup at the time and starting as a beginner. So I decided I wouldn't study it at the time. But eventually I came around and realized that I needed to continue my studies in the martial arts because I was getting so much benefits from it, which I'll talk about in a much later video. But anyway, I applied. Very traditional setting. I had an interview. The Sifu accepted me as a student and I continued my studies. Currently, I'm a Sifu and I also still practice martial arts, obviously, but this is something I want to share with larger audience, because if you don't pass this is the type of it will die, which in keeping with the tradition of martial arts, teaching others, I decided this channel could be a vehicle for introducing beginners. My inspiration for becoming a martial artist aligns itself with my values of teaching and educating others on how to cultivate their own aim and to find their path and purpose. There's much more detail and a larger picture to my martial arts journey, and I'll share that with you later on. What is the major focus of this channel and why did you choose to focus those? Well, the first idea behind the channel is to provide a key to figuring out how to have a much more fulfilling life, how to enjoy the journey, ups and downs, and see the opportunities even within challenges we face in our lives. Also, cultivate a more fulfilling life through wellness practice. Wellness is something we will need to unpack because it involves several key areas. It involves social relationship, it involves our vocation and career choices, it involves financial, it also involves our psychophysical health and fitness. So I have access as an educator and a teacher. I also have access to a lot of information that may be tedious to find or for others who have busy lives. So the idea with the channel is to kind of distill some of this into small, simple, easily consumable, practical knowledge. Also, on this channel, it's an opportunity not only for me to teach, but also for me to learn from the community that watches, because I think that teaching is an exchange. At some point, we're all teachers and we're all learning. And I think Eckhart Tolle once said that there are no students, only teachers. And also, I could benefit myself from learning from the community that develops around the content on the channel itself. I'm hoping to build a social community where we can share ideas and learn stories of our experiences, grow and learn together. I'm a lifelong learner. I love learning from people as well as sharing things that I've learned through my life experience. The last question, which is actually a bonus question, I said I was going to do 3, but I'll do one more. This person asks, how does one achieve balance? Balance remains a process. It's an ideal. It's a place you never actually reach in perfection, but it's something you strive for. I'll talk about this in future episodes, but for right now, let's just say when I talk about achieving balance, I speak of balance like a 4-legged stool, and you're sitting on this stool, you are on this stool. In order to stay on that stool, all 4 of those legs had better be pretty stable. And normally, and you probably noticed this in your own life, that if one of those legs is shorter than the other or missing, then you feel a little bit unstable. Usually if there's one leg missing, it spills over into the other legs. That means everything else has to compensate. Those legs had better be pretty stable. And what are those 4 legs? As I stated earlier, you have a financial leg, which involves saving. You have a career vocation leg, which involves your job choices as well as what you feel is your purpose, your ultimate goal. Hopefully those things align, your career and your sense of what you are here for. There are social relationships, our family, friends, colleagues, those connections we make with them. And finally, there is the psycho-emotional and fitness that makes up the other. So what is this whole idea of balance? is paying equal attention to all 4 of those areas, but not always at the same time, but just consistently finding a way to pay attention to those 4 areas. Balance is something that's ongoing. Someone once said to me that if you have balance, you have no movement. I thought about that. That makes sense. See balance as temporary. You're always working to maintain it. In the effort to maintain it, we're always kind of moving through life. Balance is stagnation. Ultimate balance, stillness. And there's nothing wrong with stillness, but I think that sometimes there's so much movement that we don't recognize that sometimes we do have to find a place of equanimity and equilibrium. So those are 3+1 bonus answers to the questions that were submitted. If I didn't, feel free to let me know in the comments and I will address them next time. But if you have other questions specifically about the channel, about me, feel free to put them in the comments. And if you like what you've seen so far, then please hit the like button and subscribe. We'll see each other again soon. Take care, stay inspired and inspirational.